Welcome to the show, Macharia. Good to have you.
All right.
How are you doing?
I am good, as always.
You're keeping well.
Oh, yeah.
Very good to see you here. City, why don't you welcome Senior with the day's proverb?
I've actually known this man for 40 years. So and when you say senior, Macharia, how do you respond to this term where people keep calling it hello senior?
You know, I always say that is a term borrowed from those pompous fellows who call themselves lawyers.
Yes.
They're the ones who refer to each other as senior.
Yes. Well said.
I don't know how it entered journalism.
Hello senior. I'm thinking, what is this person talking about?
Nimze.
Then just say habari mzee.
Sasa usasemaje na kizungu?
Hello old man.
But,
Wow.
but Gen Z at heart.
I can build completely.
Yes.
Our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the Islamic Republic of Mauritania. Okay. Hey, there was that proverb. Okay. If you tickle the earth with a hoe, she laughs with the harvest.
Now I've heard it for the first time. How Eric heard it in the morning. I've just heard it the way he heard it. But anyway, carry on. I'm sorry.
If you tickle the earth with a djembe,
she
laughs with the harvest.
Who laughs? Sorry.
The earth.
It's the earth. What's your interpretation of this one?
I think something in the region of you reap what you sow. You reap what you sow.
You reap what you sow. What you put in
You get
is what
out.
you get out.
Yeah,
Yep.
indeed.
Kabisa. There's a young lady called Lisa who says hello to you.
Hi, Dad. Yeah.
Hi.
She says, hi, Daddy. On YouTube.
Nimesalimika. At least she ate a bit of tear gas yesterday.
Yeah. There's a lot that's happening in the country, Macharia. And you've been talking about it in your weekly articles in The Nation.
Yeah.
In fact, the one for last week, I said, look, are you hearing? The one for yesterday, what was the one for yesterday saying? If you remember. Okay, you remind us, you wrote it.
I think, well, the conclusion was that this thing can take very many directions. It also comes with great risks. One is that Ruto said he welcomes the young people engaging in this dialogue. But I said that those are just words unless it is proven with action in terms of actually engaging and trying to find out what the problem is and trying to solve it. The other is that protests of this nature can go very well or can go south. And they can go south because there are people around the president who think the only way to deal with dissenting voices is to bring out the guns. There is also the possibility of these things being hijacked by forces. And some of these could be government agents to sow confusion and to cause violence so that they can then be the justification for what you might call counter-violence. And I wouldn't be surprised if that is what we have seen.
Let's look at what we saw yesterday. Let's compare, because we were discussing this earlier this morning and we're asking ourselves, what exactly are we seeing here? What we saw last week in terms of the people who came out, the profile of the people who came out onto the streets last week and what they were doing and what they were saying and how they were conducting themselves. Vehicles would pass. If it's Kenyatta Avenue and these people are here and you want to pass and you're driving, you'd be able to pass. They'd move away from you, you'd pass. If it's establishments along those roads, they would still operate. Nobody would get in there. In fact, the establishments are the ones that were offering water and food refuge to some of these protesters. And then we'd see the police action in tear gas and opening live ammunition against the protesters. And then what we saw yesterday, where we have seen the wanton destruction, those that entered Parliament and the destruction inside Parliament, those that went to City Hall and the destruction at City Hall, those that have gone to the offices of the CDF, for example, in Dagoretti South, and they've torched it and burnt it, those in Eldred that were... is this the same group of people? Have they morphed over a week and become violent?
I think In such situations, it is inevitable that there will be criminal elements who will try to take advantage. Opportunism. And I think even with the previous demonstrations organized by Raila over many years, I always used to warn that you say that you want this thing to be peaceful, but how much control do you have of the people who will come in with the intention to loot or just to cause mayhem? In a situation like we have been seeing since last week, where there is actually no real center of command, what power do the organizers have to make sure that the demonstrations remain as peaceful as they say they will be? Are they controlling the people who are out there? What will they do if mobs come in from elsewhere who are not necessarily driven by the same desire just to make a point? There will be opportunists who will want to loot. Then when you and basically cause mayhem, there are a lot of angry youth in the streets. And for many of them, being peaceful is not enough. You must throw stones. You must target somebody.
You must throw a few.
You must burn a few things.
Peace stones. Yes.
Yeah, you must burn a few things.
You must pull down something.
Then come those who are very likely deployed by the government or forces in government to also cause mayhem. It's a powder keg, really.
It's a big one.
A big one.
We were looking at it from, and we looked at the statement by the Cabinet Secretary for the Interior on Monday, in which he acknowledged that, yes, people have a right to demonstrate, to picket, to present petitions to agencies of government, but they also have a responsibility to uphold peace. They have a responsibility to not cause destruction. They have a responsibility to obey law enforcement officers. They have a responsibility not to cause violence. And he seemed to be warning against the latter part of his statement than acknowledging the first part of his statement, which is talking about the peaceful conduct that we have seen so far. And we asked ourselves, what does he know?
On the surface, it was a very good statement, emphasizing the right of people to protest, to picket, to demonstrate, which is a constitutional right, and to do so peacefully and unarmed. But something seemed to be telling me that he is aware that there will be a group out to cause violence. And the thing that struck me is somebody in government planning what you might call counter demonstrations. That's what struck me. Either he did it deliberately or he let something out of the bag inadvertently, but that struck me from very early on.
Because he actually said in his statement that there are the rights of those who are picketing and demonstrating is enshrined in the Constitution. So is the right of anybody who may have a contrary opinion to those who are out in the streets. Right?
Yeah, very good. That's the way it should be.
It is true. It's the way it is. But, when statements come out this way, you ask yourself, what are you saying? And so when you see what we saw yesterday, when you see tear gas being lobbed at protesters who are still peaceful at 8:30, 9 a.m., and the back and forth, the running battles that have been engaged from as early as that 9 a.m. going all the way, then you ask, so why are you pushing towards something?
But that's the question. I mean, these demonstrations began last week.
Yeah.
They were arguably some of the most peaceful demonstrations we've actually ever witnessed. Yet there was tear gas. So the question I asked, what was this tear gas for? Let's just start there. Then there were these vehicles we bought with these water cannons. Again, you ask the question, is it that the police had mounted a PA system and told them, clear away from this area, you shouldn't do this and this? What is it? Or is it that this is the norm in this country that anytime you have a demonstration, the police must come with tear gas? It's like a basic requirement. Do you have a demonstration? Okay, you come with your feet, we'll come with our tear gas. And then, no, and just to make it better, we'll come also with our water cannon, the vehicles that carry. That notwithstanding, we did not see shops being looted. We did not see windows being smashed. We didn't see any of that. Then we entered this week. The numbers kept growing. Yesterday, the numbers were phenomenal. And they were phenomenal across the country. Across the country, the point where places which had never seen anything of a demonstration were now demonstrating. All this back and forth went on, and then it suddenly flipped.
It's hard to tell because I was out there on last Thursday.
Yes.
Walking amongst the demonstrators and trying to figure out what is going on and talking to them.
Yes.
And they were remarkably peaceful. And I could see committed young people simply out for change, beyond even the finance bill. People just fed up of some of the excesses of this government. They were not causing any mayhem, they were not causing any violence.
No.
And it would have been a very simple thing for the police to set up a blockade around Parliament if that is what they need to do. But they were simply firing tear gas at random. It's as if they don't know what to do. They have this tear gas and they think, why am I carrying tear gas and I'm not using it?
I might as
Let me use it.
I might as well use it. You know, it was ridiculous. Now, yesterday was something else.
It was at a certain point in time. It suddenly became something very different.
And I saw police deliberately firing into the crowds.
Yes.
You know, not tear gas canisters, with AK-47s. You know, with rifles.
Macharia, on this expressway, I passed it. There was a policeman I saw who was out there simply literally aiming
On
at
the
protesters.
expressway?
Yes. Because from
On the viaduct?
expressway up
On the
there.
viaduct?
Yes. Up there, you can actually see what's happening down there.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, but what is this person doing with this gun aiming at protesters down here? Now, the question and this was around 3:30, and I was asking myself, what is this that I am witnessing? People stopped their vehicles to actually witness, and they were taking pictures. Some took pictures of policemen, some were taking pictures of the demonstrators. Now, when you then hear that shops were broken into, shops were looted, entire supermarkets were looted, and then you hear again of other premises, businesses owned by individuals being destroyed in other parts of the country. You have to ask this question and ask, we've been having these demonstrations. We've not seen any of this. Why are we seeing it now?
You know what worried me is in its confusion.
Yes.
It's lack of understanding of what is happening. The government started coming out with a statement. Let me say the government, because those people who speak for the government.
Yeah.
The official government spokesman speaks for the government, not for himself.
Yep.
Yes.
When you start coming out with messaging that reminds me of the Nyayo era, that anybody who dissents must be an agent of foreign masters,
Yes.
must be on the payroll of some foreign force.
Yes.
That is a mindset straight out of 1990.
It is. It is.
Okay? And therefore, what is it being an agent of a foreign master? It means you're a traitor. That you can be arrested for treason.
Yes.
Okay? What we saw yesterday from the president is an advancement of that same
Yep.
narrative. He used
Yes.
the word treasonous.
Yes, he did.
That is an offense which carries
A death sentence.
a death sentence.
Yes.
What does he want to achieve? What does he want to do? Who is he going to hold in court on charges of treason? And these charges cannot stick just like that.
Yep.
Going on the streets cannot be treasonous.
No, it can't.
Demanding your rights is not treasonous. Yes, it is a serious offense to damage property and all that. But he would be so much better off responding to the demands being made by the people.
Shari, I just want to look at an issue here. And for me, I find it very difficult to create any kind of balance on some of these things. When we hear the words that the president spoke yesterday, I mean, of course, when you want to look at the optics of it, he seemed like a man who was, really angry. And now going to some of the comments that you made, but as he was speaking, and I'm not saying later, I'm saying as he was speaking, in another part of the city, people were being shot at night. We don't have the details as to what exactly happened or who exactly the perpetrators were. We know what people say they saw. And this was in Githurai last night.
It is frightening because I think it was
frightening to think.
If what I'm hearing on the
it's frightening.
It was a massacre.
It was a massacre, and it's frightening to think that at that very moment, the president was speaking about something that he sees to be treasonous, whereby the very people that are supposed to be protected under the cover of a state are being massacred in that way. I'm trying to find a balance, and I am hard-pressed to. I cannot see it.
It's not possible to find that balance. The other thing is the Minister for Defense, Aden Duale, signed a Gazette notice deploying the army. Are you deploying an army against a foreign occupation force, a foreign invasion, or against your own children? What will be the rules of engagement when the army gets onto the streets? Are we going back to 1982 when we used to walk with our IDs held up in the air and at the mercy of soldiers who do not respect anyone's constitutional rights? Secondly, is that order even legal?
Yeah.
I am not a lawyer, but I do not know whether our constitution envisages deploying an army against citizens.
No way.
Unless with concurrence of parliament.
Yep.
That is precisely it. And parliament currently is not in session.
We have seen it before, the deployment of the military in the security operation in the north, where they were deployed. And the committee responsible for such matters in Parliament, the Defence and Foreign Relations Committee, actually rapped the government and said, you must have come to us before doing this. And whereas the government went to Parliament to inform Parliament about this, they were told by the committee, no, you actually should have come to us before deploying. We're seeing another repeat of the same.
Yes.
Is it? That Gazette notice has quoted various aspects of the law, the Constitution in this, the Constitution read together with the Defence Act, this.
And by the way, I think Dole forgot that there is an existing order, which was issued, I think, during Uhuru's time, allowing deployment of the military in the whole of the northeastern and contiguous regions, Nairobi, and the whole stretch of Nairobi to Mombasa, and then, of course, upwards again to Lamu. That was supposed to be in reaction to the terrorist threats. And I remember writing at that time, fine, you may need to do some extreme actions when there are terrorist threats, but technically deploying the army across half the country, there is something wrong.
Very.
It is an indication that you're going into martial law.
Yeah.
And there are already existing deployments in northern Kenya, Baringo, Turkana, West Pokot,
Yes.
Samburu, Isiolo.
Yeah.
So are we actually going into martial law? Are we agreeing that the government has been unable to assert its authority using the normal instruments of governance?
And Macharia, when we talk
and
about,
must call in the military.
And when are we talking? What we're talking about here, when we talk about inability, is essentially is a non-desire, because you cannot call it anything else. That here, Kenyans, again, and we have to say it so many times, who are working well within the right to then be able to express themselves. It is outlined in the Constitution, which last time I checked is the supreme law under which Kenya abides. That you say it is not possible to have a conversation, to say, let's look at what Kenyans are actually saying. For me, that was a golden opportunity. It was a golden opportunity that presented itself yesterday to be able to say, okay, guys, let's take a step back here and let's now say what we can do. But unfortunately, that opportunity was taken, it was rolled up in a ball, it was smashed against the wall. And if anything, I think what we've done now is that we've fomented this dissent even greater. It's not a good picture. It's an even worse reality. And that's what we're working with today.
There's no modern democratic country where the president can rule by force, where he can close his ears to what his people are saying and simply say, my way or the highway. We are entering very dangerous
waters,
territory. And I think the president must take responsibility for that. He must step back. Yes, the protesters must step back. They must also realize that they are not in control of the situation. But he bears the primary responsibility.
He's the duty bearer.
He's the duty bearer. But let us not forget, it was not too long ago he warned that some people who he seemed to disagree with have an option of
three things.
One of which was death.
And
that was a simple commercial dispute in which I don't even know how the president intervened on one side. A very simple thing, and you're warned that one option might be death. Now here is where the authority of the state is challenged. Will that option be mass murder? Will it be genocide? Will it be regression to military rule? He better step back, think, and if he does not want to listen to anybody else, because maybe he's too proud to listen, let him at least listen to his children. By his children, I don't mean his biological children, but those people on the streets who are his children.
And he's described them as such. Yes. He has said, hawa vijana ni watoto wetu. Right? So he's already acknowledging that. When you say he has an opportunity to step back, what does step back entail in this instance for the president?
On Sunday, he gave a very good address, which I acknowledged. And for me, it was an indication that he is willing to step back, to listen, and he specifically said he's willing to engage. As simple as that.
But yeah, he has said it before.
Well, by his actions last night, he's not willing to engage. He is talking about a further crackdown.
So what is this that then would move this conversation forward? Because you said any talk of engaging without being followed by action would be moot. So what exactly do you want him to do? So he says, I am willing to engage. I'm hearing you. Yesterday he said the same thing. He said, I actually acknowledge the young people who are coming out and they are bringing our national discourse to be issue-based. And I am hearing what you're saying. What next should he do? Should he say, I'm going to be in Kasarani on Wednesday? Anybody who come, let's meet. What should he do? How should this look like?
Yesterday he spoke from both sides of the mouth. On the one hand, he said he acknowledges the young people and their protests and the peaceful nature of their protests. On the other hand, he said they had been infiltrated by criminals. We don't know who those criminals are. I don't know whether he knows
who they are.
Maybe he knows who they
Either.
are.
You know, the confusion we are seeing, I mean, that abduction of people just because they're bloggers who are,
They are
Yeah.
known
They are
bloggers.
vocal.
you know, such idiocy, I don't know, from our security agencies.
Does it not remind you of the Mwakenya days?
It's a step from there.
Yes.
Where you just pick people simply because
Randomly.
they dare voice their thoughts.
Yes, that's it.
Tell the Gen Z about the Mwakenya days.
They don't know.
What is the what are the Mwakenya days?
I'll let Macharia do
Macharia,
that.
you
because this
do
man
that.
has been
You
in journalism
covered
longer
it.
than I have, yes.
You were never arrested.
No, I lived in Mombasa.
People used to be arrested in Mombasa.
So what happened? What was the Mwakenya days?
Kenya days was it was a time when mostly out of the University of Nairobi, radicals, academics, students started stepping away from the straight and narrow Nyayo path. Started imagining that things can be different. Started spreading leaflets and so on and so forth. So the government started cracking down on people. And people would be arrested in the middle of the night, held for a week or so in the torture chambers at Nyayo House.
Yes.
In the NIS, those days it was called the Special Branch.
Nyati House.
Its headquarters at Nyati House and other places, and tortured. Then they would be brought to court after 5 p.m. before selective magistrates. I remember Umonti Tunya, I think there was Justice Bra, and of course there was the head of prosecutions was a fellow called Chunga, Deputy Public Prosecutor.
Notorious.
And after you have been through that torture, when you go there, the only thing you will do is sign guilt. You have already written a statement and signed it. The only thing you will go is do and plead guilty. I was at the weekly review at that time. I attended one or two of those cases. And one fellow, can't remember who, was supposed to plead guilty, and he said, no, I'm not pleading guilty. This was a coerced confession. You know what happened?
In court.
Chunga applied for adjournment. That guy was supposed to go back to the dungeons. He just said,
But
I accept.
I'm guilty.
I accept. I agree.
So what would happen after you plead guilty?
Well, you're sentenced you're for 7 or 8 years for sedition.
So you're taken to prison.
You are taken to prison.
And so then this now would be the committees and the Kodiagas and the rest.
Yes.
And that would be better than going back to Nyati House.
It would be better than going back to Nyayo House because people used to be tortured terribly.
And the arrest did not necessarily require you to do wrong. They would say they found you with publication. Woe betide you if they found any book that had Karl Marx written on it, or anything that spoke of revolution, and they'd say they'd find you with it.
Or if you didn't even have to have anything.
They would
just
say
if they don't like you or they suspect that you
or
have
your face looks like it's bending in a certain direction.
Radical thoughts.
Yes.
They come and plant those things on you.
Yes.
In fact, for some reason, we used to wonder, are they the ones printing them? They come and plant those things on you, and that's the end of you for the next 6 or 7 or 8 years. Those were the days we used to say, walls have ears. The way we talk these days openly in public places, in bars, in restaurants, in buses.
Even in a situation like the one we're in right now.
Yeah, we can talk. In those days, you were not just afraid to talk. You were afraid to think.
To breathe.
You were afraid to think. And God forbid that these guys want to take us back that way.
But that's a scary thing, is it not, Macharia? Because this is where...
When you form a secretive squad charged with abducting people, you are not taken to a police station. You are driven around in cars being interrogated. Or you are taken to some... I don't know whether they call them private houses or safe houses.
Unmarked house
interrogated.
Or containers for that matter.
You are not allowed to talk to your lawyers. You're not allowed to contact your family. They confiscate your phone and go through it without any court orders. You are not booked into any police station. You are not technically under arrest. You could be disappeared very easily. Now, Ruto came to office pledging to end the excesses of the Kenyatta regime, of the so-called disappearances and extrajudicial killings. Of course, Ruto was the deputy president during those 10 years, and he says he didn't know what was happening. What is different from that special squad, which we are told is comprised of National Intelligence Service agents, who, since the reforms transforming the special branch to NIS, was moved away from operations involving citizens arresting people. They are not supposed to arrest people. They can investigate, they can give their recommendations, but by law, they're not supposed to arrest
information
people.
gatherers,
The
essentially.
information gatherers. Now they're actively involved in those dark, what you might call dark activities.
Why would that happen? Take me to last week. So we see those abductions last week. Last week, there's no violence from the protesters. Last week, you are hearing the conversation here is, no, we are uncomfortable with the tax measures that have been proposed. We are uncomfortable with even the expenditures that have been proposed. Basically, we are uncomfortable with the budget. We are uncomfortable with the economic situation of the country. We don't think that the proposed budget for the next year is going to address our issues and our needs. We don't think you are aligned to what our needs are. Why would that create any form of a need to abduct people?
It tells you that the government is scared
Of what?
of its own shadow. As simple as that, because in the past, they knew who they are dealing with. If you have demonstrations, it is Raila.
Yep.
If you're not going to arrest Raila, arrest a few of his MPs, Kinababu Owino and all the other characters who are mobilizing. This time, they don't know who to go for. It is a faceless, leaderless movement. Now they are looking. I understand those guys who are being abducted they are trying to find out
Who's behind this?
who is behind this. Who are your financiers? Some of them have no clue because they're just bloggers who have voice support for the
For this movement.
For this movement. The police have got no clue. And we have people in this government who, as we said, the mindset of the Nyayo era.
Yeah.
There must be some dark force behind this with a lot of money. They have managed, actually, to tell us that it is Vladimir Putin of Russia working together with Joe Biden of the US and the president of China, who are coordinating
In concert.
In concert. I mean, that is what we heard from the government spokesman by implication. Yes. Somebody told us that,
Powerful government.
we have done the impossible.
We've actually made the US, Russia, and China to work together on a certain matter like this.
To sponsor this demonstration.
Okay. You said even yesterday that we are, and that's why we even angled this conversation by saying we are on the edge of a precipice. We are at a defining moment. What do you think should happen from both sides, from government side and from the citizen side, going forward?
First, everyone must step back. We cannot afford to have an intransigent government simply determined to crush all voices that refuse to toe the line. But secondly, also those organizing the demonstrations, whether they are organized or not, or the youth, must also realize that without control, when you have such an amorphous movement, without even any clear aims and strategies, then there's also that risk of it getting out of control, because you cannot, once it starts, you cannot manage it.
You can't call it back.
So there's a need for both to step back. And I would say right now, more than any other time, there is need for reasonable people in society, respected community leaders or church leaders or even friends of Kenya to come in and mediate. Yes, the problem, the most immediate thing is the finance bill. Let us revisit that. It doesn't matter that it was passed. There's nothing that stops it from being revisited. The president can do one great thing. He has the power to send it back to Parliament before
the Museveni did his
before signing it, and say, let us renegotiate it. But then also at the same time, let us remember the finance bill was just a trigger.
Yeah.
You can remove from it so many objectionable things, which are what are annoying people. When you find budgets for the spouse of the deputy president and the spouse of the
president,
Prime Cabinet
Secretary.
Yeah.
What are you telling us? When you find that the president and the deputy president in this day and age have what they call confidential accounts, money which is not for any specific purposes, which is not audited, that is legalized theft. They're the ones telling us to tighten our belts. That is legalized theft. Do away with such nonsense. When you find cabinet secretaries, let me call the word flossing, because they're wearing watches worth 5 million shillings and shoes worth I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of shillings. And wananchi ask, where is this money from? Let us not cheat them. It is from their earnings. Let us assume that they stole it. Have they been subjected to lifestyle audit by KRA? When you find some semi-literate politicians like in the Moi era going around the Rift Valley carrying bagfuls of cash to give at Harambes, we thought these things ended with Kinakuria Kanyengi. I don't think any reasonable MP or a business person has got that amount of cash, millions every day, just to dish out. Let us stop that regression to that era. In any case, there is a law existing against public servants putting on those displays of distributing cash at public rallies. Let us go for a reset and deal with those things which wananchi are seeing.
Do you think it's possible? Do you think? Because every time we have guests here who are from government or allied to the government, we ask them, what are you hearing? Are you hearing what the people are telling you? Do you think they're hearing this? Do you think they're hearing that we do not see goodwill in you telling us to tighten our belts? You're not tightening your belts. Do you think they're hearing that?
On Sunday, when the president spoke, I thought he is hearing, if not some of those characters around him.
I didn't think so.
But from yesterday, I think he's deaf.
I said I didn't think so. I said I from what I heard from the president on Sunday, he's hearing that there is talk, but he's not understanding what the talk is all about. And that's why he was quick to start explaining how much money has been allocated to issues that will, assist the youth.
That one was a bit laughable. I don't know.
Because that appears to be... I can hear you guys are complaining, but let me tell you. Now, there is actually money to take you to school.
No, I think
there's money to make sure that you can get, these jobs, finya computer in ICT hubs, because CDF will come and create those ICT hubs, and you'll get jobs. Yeah. This is what I'm hearing you complaining about. I have a solution. He was
hearing. I think the physical act of hearing, the ear hears, but listening is something totally different.
Understanding
what the people are saying is something totally different.
The problem with our politicians, they think they lead sheep. as long as you're the president or you're a minister or you're an MP, you lose your mind to this fellow who you elected, who knows everything and what is good for you.
Yeah.
Your views don't matter. Even your pain does not matter because this fellow knows better what the prescription is. And I think that is the situation now we are in.
You know,
but the president, I believe that I'd like sometimes to give him the benefit of doubt. I think he's a bit more intelligent than some of those characters around him who talk so much.
Political intelligence.
But Macharia, then what is the competing interest?
At least politically, he's a bit more savvy than them.
Yeah.
And I would hope that right now, wherever he is stepping back and saying, what have I led this country into? Is this blood on my hands? I thought I owned the youth because I've told them they can finger computer and I've set up digital hubs here and there. But obviously I have lost the youth. He knows this is a tribeless movement.
It doesn't get more tribeless than this.
Does he still imagine that he will cobble up an ethnic alliance loyal to him for 2027? You know, these guys seem to think that 2027, his re-election is a foregone conclusion. It is not, and it cannot be. And if what we have seen out there, including in the heartland of his support, it is not that youth who are being paid by anybody. It is everybody. And even if it is the youth who out there, even their mothers and fathers are saying, go ahead.
We support.
We are fed up, even us. And that is across the country.
If we were to say what next, Macharia, because I mean, look, I think it's difficult to look into a crystal ball and say, okay, well, this is what is going to happen tomorrow. We already know what the murmurings are. We can hear them in terms of the resolve that has just been made, if anything, a lot stronger by the sentiments that we heard yesterday. And then, of course, the bloodbath that we see happening. Again, I'm going to go back to Githurai because I think it must be said. That's happening there. Again, strengthens the resolve of many. And that, again, so now we have a reversal of the situation. You've heard what the president said, but are not listening to that. What would be next for Kenya?
That is what he should be addressing his mind to. And I think the first thing he can do is get rid of all those people around him who may be misadvising him. And try and listen to what might be reasonable, neutral voices. Many of those around him have a vested interest because that's all they do, to hang around the president and earn their money. They are brokers, they are wheeler dealers, they're enjoying the perks of high office. They cannot imagine life without being under the president's coattails. You cannot get any reasonable advice from such characters. So reach out to different groups, take advice, and please listen to the ground. Don't let others listen for you.
I would argue, Macharia, that every president in this country has always had intelligence briefings.
Yes, they always
And
have.
I would like to assume that those intelligence briefings are honest. And you're told, excuse me, sir, this is what is really happening. Now, if I look at the difference of what we're seeing now with any other that we've had, this thing is taking place throughout the country. It's not in one city. It's not in one domain, which is supposed to be the stronghold of an individual. It's happening everywhere, even in places you never thought it would happen. We have cases where government officials have gone for Harambes and have spoken very well. Very well. Everybody's quiet, and then begins by saying, now we are promising, and the crowd tells them, stop. Stop. Those are clear messages. Why ask about the competing interest? What is it that would prevent somebody from hearing a clear message? Because the message is clear. And where we are today is not where we were yesterday. This thing has changed. If one can't see it, then there's a huge problem.
I agree with you. And like you said, Macharia, this is a seasoned ear that is hearing this. I mean, it's not any other person. This is William Ruto, who politically has been there. Politically, he has the ear of knowing, even the way he coined his campaign, and knowing that this is the issue that will resonate very well with the people, tells you that in terms of his ability to hear and understand what the issue is on the ground, he has it. So what would do that with that competing interest that would make him...
What's preventing him from,
get this message this time?
I'm just saying it is simply the lack of comprehension. He cannot imagine that he is the president of Kenya.
This is happening.
And is being challenged by some riffraff. Therefore, they must be crushed. But he doesn't know who these riffraff are. That is his problem.
Macharia, can I put across a
on the one hand, you say it is criminals. On the other hand, it is only watoto wa Farex. Remember, when it started, when this online campaign started, all of them were extremely dismissive. These are just keyboard warriors who will never get out of
Actually, they were insultingly dismissive.
Comfort zones. They can just talk on Twitter, but that's the end of it, and TikTok. These fellows, up to today, are still not appreciating that the ground has shifted dramatically. Completely. That young men and women who have never been interested in politics
are now interested.
The ones who say they don't even watch the news or read the newspapers are now taking a very, very keen interest. They have been saying that these guys have not read the finance bill.
But they have.
I have talked to many of them. At least they have read and they have some understanding. And they probably have a better understanding of it than many of those MPs
who are voting,
who are just hardened into voting yes, including members of the finance committee who I suspect were just given something by IMF and told this is it. We saw with our own eyes and heard with our own ears. Chris Kipto, a seasoned treasury mandarin.
Yes.
He comes to the studio and is unable to explain a very basic element of that bill. Who else did we see? A fellow from KRA. You assume he knows. He comes to the studio and is completely at sea. We saw the chairman of the finance committee. The less said, the better. So, who actually wrote this bill? We are seeing David Lee on Twitter, the president's chief economic advisor, every single day tweeting. Is he explaining anything about the bill?
Nope.
No, he's just insulting people. Why do those guys even deserve a salary?
Big question. It's the beginning of a new conversation for the country. And like MACHARIA GAITHO is saying, it's time for all of us to pause and say, what direction do we take? Those in leadership led by the president, his cabinet, his advisors, members of parliament, including all the way to governors and MCAs, listen, pause, listen, think what happens next. Those that are demonstrating, those that are truthfully aggrieved and they're feeling aggrieved and they've been participating in this, think. So what happens next? If this thing gets out of control, how do we rein control back? MACHARIA, thank you for coming. Come again soon. This is the beginning of a very long conversation.
Absolutely.
MACHARIA GAITHO is a veteran journalist and he's been our guest for this hour. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.